Welcome to What to Watch Wednesdays, hosted by someone's favorite film buff, Nathan. I love movies and I want to share that with you. From old originals to cult classics and foreign favorites, along with straight up drivel, WWW is your place for all things movies. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. 88.1 The Burg, your movie central. Welcome to What to Watch Wednesdays. My name is Nathan, the host of What to Watch Wednesdays, the show where we talk about 3 movies all in the same night. And for tonight's episode of What to Watch Wednesdays, we're going to get into the festive spirit here. We're going to do some holiday movies. We're going to talk about Christmas movies. More specifically, we're going to be talking about one of the most festive trilogies of all time. That's right, tonight we're talking about the Die Hard trilogy of movies. Yes, you heard me correctly. The Die Hard trilogy is by far the most festive trilogy out there, and that is not exaggeration, hyperbole, or a joke on my part. Okay, it might be a joke on my end, but I also find the joke very funny, and it's not really a joke that we're going to be talking about them. So, let's get into our watch list really quickly. The 3 movies we have on the watch list tonight are Die Hard from 1988, Die Hard 2 from 1990, and Die Hard with a Vengeance from 1995. And the reason I say that they're festive and that we have a holiday series of movies and that they're all Christmas movies is that Die Hard has often been considered one of the best Christmas movies of all time. And I don't mean the trilogy, I just mean the original Die Hard. It's kind of a running joke that has turned into a not joke anymore, and it's turned into a legitimate appraisal of the movie as it being one of the best Christmas movies of all time. So, when we come back from the break, we're going to jump into whether or not I agree with that appraisal and whether or not I'd consider it a Christmas movie. Stick around for that. 88.1 The Burg, your movie central. Welcome back to What to Watch Wednesdays. And for our first movie on the watch list tonight, we will be taking a look at Die Hard from 1988, available to watch now on Amazon Prime. For the basic plot summary of the original Die Hard, we follow police officer John McClane as he must fight for survival after terrorists crash a Christmas party held by his wife's boss. Does that sound familiar to anybody out there? I think it does. I think a lot of people are familiar with this basic plot summary, as has been the case with a lot of the movies that I've talked about this quarter. You know, things like Back to the Future and Silence of the Lambs, things like that. People are very familiar with this plot summary. It's a very iconic movie. It's a very well-known movie. Nearly everybody knows of Die Hard, which is really funny to me because when I tried writing down that plot summary, I had to start and stop again and start all over and try to rewrite my plot summary because it either turned out being too long or too convoluted or too confusing even to me to read. I'll just get this out of the way right here and now. I think that the plot of the original Die Hard is kind of convoluted if you stop and think about it for a second. Like, the core question on the top of my mind from the very beginning of the movie is, why is John McClane going to the Christmas party held by his wife's work when he could just go and visit his wife? Why are they going to the party? I think the movie explains it, but I'll put it this way, I wasn't really satisfied by the explanation I got for it, and on a base level, it just doesn't make enough sense to really warrant being super convoluted, but at the same time, the movie pulls it off, so I can't complain too much. Really, when it comes to the original Die Hard, I could complain about certain things, but as you'll kind of figure out over the course of this review, I like the movie a lot, and I enjoyed it, so a lot of my complaints will mean squat by the end. When I say complaints, I'd say that the first thing I want to complain about, but again, quote unquote complain, is that the movie doesn't really get going until the terrorists show up. And I know they're in the plot summary, and I know that this is an action movie, so when you have the antagonists actually show up in your movie, that's when the movie gets going. No duh, Sherlock, that's exactly how plots work. When the antagonist shows up, they tend to cause a threat to the protagonist, and that's what kicks your story into high gear. Let me clarify very quickly. What I mean to say is that The 20 or so minutes leading up to before the terrorists show up felt uncategorically slow for even an action movie. Even when an action movie takes its time to introduce their antagonists, usually they do a decent enough job of making the pacing before that pretty fast, or at least speeding it up a little bit, getting to a point pretty quickly. Die Hard likes to take its time in the beginning, and it really likes to just let you exist in the moment, which is very strange, and it felt kind of weird and slow in comparison to a lot of action movies I've even seen from this period in time. Think of action movies from the 80s, and you'll realize, I mean, good example, actually, now that I think about it, not just mentioning general action movies from the 80s. Another movie that this same director worked on was Predator. And Predator, despite not having the Predator show up until about halfway through, manages to keep the plot moving very quickly from the go point. Die Hard feels a lot slower than even Predator in the very beginning. And so, on the one hand, it felt kind of weird and confusing to me for it to be that way, but once the terrorists showed up, it really started to pick up its pace, and I started to kind of gel with the overall pace of the story a lot more when that happened. I will say that just because the terrorists show up doesn't mean that the movie gets any simpler. If anything, because they're terrorists, they tend to complicate matters, if you can imagine. And so, because of that, when they show up, they start introducing a lot of other things. We don't just follow John McClane throughout this story. We follow also the leader of the terrorists, that being Hans Gruber, who is played by Alan Rickman, who does a bang-up job. We also follow Al Powell, who is a police officer who was called to the scene and ends up getting thrown into the entire situation. We also follow John McClane's limo driver, who's just in the basement during the entire thing, or more so in the garage. Basement, here I say, when that's the exact same thing as a garage. It's close enough. The point is, we have multiple different perspectives that aren't just John McClane in this story. And normally, I would say that could be a bad or confusing thing to have in your movie. Surprisingly, I was blown away at how well the movie could juggle all of these points of view without losing grip on John McClane being the protagonist, and with how well all of these side characters were portrayed. I was surprised that none of them felt infuriating to watch do their thing. Now, of course, there were a couple examples of people who were somewhat annoying, but not infuriating, not detracting from the overall enjoyment of the movie. And that's the thing that was very surprising to me. That was something that I did not expect from having so many different points of view. I almost want to say that this movie, to me at least, feels like it could have been maybe in a way based on a real series of events. And I want to tread carefully here because I know for a fact that Die Hard is not based on a real event that happened. I know for a fact that it was based on the author watching the movie The Towering Inferno. And that's the author of the book that the movie is based on. And even then, the movie's not exactly based on the book. It takes quite a few creative liberties. So it's not based on an actual event. But what I'm saying is with how many different perspectives and how almost convoluted but still digestible it is, it feels like a Hollywood interpretation of a real event. I mean, of course, on the higher end of Hollywood based on a real event movies. So there's that much at the very least. It's not like a badly based on a true story movie, badly made based on a true story movie. Before we go any further, and before we go to our music break, as a matter of fact, I want to address the elephant in the room that I have so skillfully dodged this entire review. I want to address the fact that people often call Die Hard one of the best Christmas movies of all time. And I want to clear the record right here and now. Is this movie a Christmas movie? Well, in my opinion, I would say it is. Weirdly, I was not expecting to call it a Christmas movie, but I will go to bat and say, yes, I would personally consider it a Christmas movie. Is it one of the best? Sure, whatever. It can go on the list as one of the best. Is it the best Christmas movie? Now, hold on a second. I like Elf, It's a Wonderful Life, and National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation more than Die Hard as Christmas movies. So, there's that. I would not support somebody saying that Die Hard is the best Christmas movie. I would say that I like other movies a lot more as Christmas movies than Die Hard. I like Die Hard quite a bit as a movie. I don't like it as much as a Christmas movie as some others out there. Okay? Cool. That's my take on it, and that's where my take on it is going to stay. And now that you've got my take on that movie, you'll probably also want to hear where my take is going to stay when it comes to the sequel, because it did not impress me. When we come back, we're going to jump into Die Hard 2, so stick around for that. 88 won the Burg, your movie central. Welcome back to What's a Watch Wednesdays. And for our second movie on the watch list tonight, we will be taking a look at Die Hard 2 from 1990, available to watch now on Hulu. For the basic plot summary of Die Hard 2, we pick up 1 year after the events of the original Die Hard, where John McClane is caught up in a terrorist threat to an airport. That's right, a bunch of terrorists threaten an airport. How do they threaten the airport? I'm not going to tell you, because frankly, I don't care. I'm just going to say that they threaten an airport, and that's good enough, because that is factually what happens in the movie. They just threaten the airport. If we get into all the specifics of it, it'll either be too convoluted, or I will have spent more time talking about the plot of Die Hard 2 than I will have ever wanted to in my life. And in this case, I think it would have been both. So I'm not going to talk about it anymore, and we're going to move on to some of the reasons why I don't care. Reason number 1, I don't really like Die Hard 2. Reason number 2, I didn't really like Die Hard 2. Reason number 3, I kind of dislike Die Hard 2 in comparison to the original Die Hard. Let's put it this way, out of any second movie I've seen this entire year of 2025, I would have to say, and okay, granted, sometimes I've talked about trilogies that aren't a 1, 2, 3 sequential order. Not all of these examples are going to be perfect, but think of things like the Terminator trilogy, the Alien trilogy, the Matrix trilogy, the Hannibal trilogy, the Back to the Future trilogy, the Star Wars trilogy, even the prequel trilogy. Yes, that includes that. The second movie there. It's just nearly any second movie I've talked about this year. Out of all of them I've seen, I think Die Hard 2 is my least favorite second movie I have seen in the current year of 2025. And that's saying quite a lot. It doesn't exactly have competition, but I mean, it's got competition in terms of quality, we'll give it that much. Okay, let's break down why. I can't just stand around waffling and say it's one of my least favorites without providing a specific example or specific reasoning as to why it's my least favorite. So I'm going to do exactly that. No matter how good the sound design is, no matter how good the cinematography is, no matter how good Bruce Willis is as an actor, no matter how good their story pacing is, and keep in mind not all of those things are great to begin with, none of it matters if the editing is as mediocre as it is in Die Hard 2. Let me rephrase that. When the editing in Die Hard 2 ranges from just okay and functional to what I would consider heinous actions against the editing community, it doesn't really matter how good other elements of your movie are when you have moments that I would consider heinous in terms of editing. Now, I'm not going to provide specific examples, because if I did that, we'd be here for, no joke, actually about 45 minutes. I could talk about the editing for this movie for that long, with specific examples, a pie chart, a PowerPoint presentation, and a bunch of visual aids that I can't give you because we're on radio right now. So I'm not going to do that, but just understand that I have the capacity and possibly even the will and desperate need to do that. And then understand that this is the main contributing factor as to why I did not like Die Hard 2. Mostly because I am very, very fond of video editing and very fond of film editing as an art form. So when I point out that the editing isn't that great, you should understand that it means a lot to me. And it's something I take very seriously. And when I see it done not that well, I feel the need to point it out. Now, moving on from there, so that I don't get too angry tonight and we can go into our holiday season with some nice feelings, let's talk about something that won't make me yell and get very angry. Let's talk about the side characters in Die Hard 2. Oh no, this might have been a bad pick for something that doesn't make me angry, because in comparison to the original Die Hard, I would say nearly every side character in Die Hard 2 is either flat, not portrayed as well, not exactly performed as well, or is infuriating, is outright infuriating. You remember how in the original Die Hard, I mentioned that none of the characters were outright infuriating? Well, in Die Hard 2, some of them do become outright infuriating. It probably doesn't help that the most annoying character from the original Die Hard returns in Die Hard 2 and thus becomes infuriating. That is an issue in and of itself, but a lot of the other side characters are just kind of annoying, or they aren't played that well when you compare them to somebody like Al Powell or even Hans Gruber. When you compare the villain of Die Hard 2 to Hans Gruber, it is no contest. This disgraced colonel who's going out to save Ramon Esperanza, whoever that is, I couldn't even follow what Ramon Esperanza even did. The exposition happened too quickly for me to actually let the information sit in. And keep in mind, he's not really the main antagonist. The colonel, this ex-colonel, is the main antagonist for most of the story. So you kind of have to follow him more than Esperanza, but it's this weird dynamic thing. But the point is, it doesn't matter that there's two of them, and I can't decide which one is the antagonist now that I'm actually live, because neither of them are as interesting or entertaining as Hans Gruber from the original Die Hard. We tend to praise Alan Rickman for Hans Gruber for a reason, and that is because he managed to portray a psychopath perfectly. He portrayed a character who had a lot of sort of delusions of grandeur in and of himself, and you could understand the psychology of that character. You could put yourself in his shoes and maybe not sympathize with him, but understand his actions from his own twisted perspective. None of the villains in Die Hard 2 have that advantage. Nearly none of them do. Actually, none of them. Not nearly. None of them. Now, let's get into the core issue, the biggest issue I actually have with Die Hard 2, aside from the editing, which I know I could talk about for a long time. My real problem with Die Hard 2 is I suppose something that I didn't bring up with the original Die Hard, that I probably should have to kind of make this pay off more, but I'm going to bring it up now anyways. So part of the strength of the original Die Hard was how Bruce Willis portrayed a character who was competent, but also reckless and made a lot of mistakes. Something that's well known about Die Hard is that John McClane is a cop, and he's very strong, and he's very physically competent, and he knows how to help people. This does not mean that he's trained for dealing with terrorist situations. And that means that he makes a lot of mistakes when he's stealthing around the building. He makes a lot of mistakes. And it's what makes his perspective so interesting in Die Hard, and it's what makes the people from the outside's perspectives just as interesting. Now, when you put both perspectives in direct opposition to each other and have John McClane interacting with the people at the airport, who may not be super equipped, but might be more equipped than John McClane is, and you put them in the same room together, there tends to be this weird dynamic shift where all of a sudden John McClane seems more competent than he did in the first movie. And that's actually a bad thing. You don't want him seeming like the smart one. You don't want him seeming like the confident one. You don't want him to mistake his way into everything, but you don't want him to seem like the most sensible and well-adjusted person in the lineup. Because the strength of the original Die Hard was John McClane not being that. So when the sequel does that, it all of a sudden falls apart in on itself, and it becomes this constant subconscious thing of realizing, hang on a second, why does John McClane suddenly know what he's doing? This is not the John McClane from the first movie, and I understand that there's character shifts, but at the same time, it's not working as well as you guys are thinking it would, and I'm really not a fan of it. I think it was funny and interesting and much more satisfying to watch John McClane constantly fail because he was incompetent. That's what made it stand out as an action movie. When you take it away, Die Hard 2 feels like nothing but generic. I'll put it that way. Now then, the last two things I want to say about it, or the last three, really quickly, I want to mention that this movie is technically called Die Harder, and I think that's really funny. You could call it Die Hard 2 or Die Harder. Anyways, I will also say that despite my criticisms, Die Hard 2 has moments here and there, and I say that with heavy quotes implied and doing heavy quotes myself. I think it has moments here and there. There are not a lot of them, and they're very short, but it has moments. I will also ask you the following question. Is Die Hard 2 a Christmas movie? No, I don't consider it a Christmas movie. I'd rather not. Okay, now that we've gotten that out of the way, and I may seem somewhat angry, let's go into our music break. And I promise, once we come back from that music break, I will not be angry or all that upset, because we're going to be talking about Die Hard with a Vengeance. So stick around for that. 88.1 The Burg, your movie central. Welcome back to What to Watch Wednesdays. And for our third and final movie on the watch list tonight, we will be taking a look at Die Hard with a Vengeance from 1995, available to rent now from places such as Amazon, YouTube, and Fandango at Home. For the basic plot summary of Die Hard with a Vengeance, we follow John McClane once again, as a terrorist by the name of Simon forces him to go on a wild goose chase in order to prevent New York from suffering a series of increasingly brutal bombings. Now, doesn't that sound somewhat interesting? Well, spoiler alert, although not really spoiler alert, it is quite interesting. Because that plot summary I just told you is communicated pretty much perfectly within the first 3 minutes of the movie. You understand exactly what's going to happen with Die Hard with a Vengeance from the get-go. It punches you right in the stomach and says, hey, this is our plot. Are you ready? Let's go. We're going right now. We're going to stop right here, 3 minutes in, and introduce John McClane to you again, because it's been 5 years since Die Hard 2. Here he is. We're going to spend about 3 minutes with him. We're going to kind of get reacquainted with how his life has been going so far. And then we're going to get going again. We're going to go. We're going to go right now. We're not going to stop ever. We're just going to keep going and going and going. And it's going to be really fast and really hectic. I hope you're ready for it. And if you're not ready for it, like I certainly wasn't, it's going to be amazing, is what it's going to be for you. Now that you're ready for it, it's still going to be amazing. In case you couldn't tell from my inflection and from how excited I sound, I loved Die Hard with a Vengeance. I did not expect to love it like that, but I did. I really liked Die Hard with a Vengeance, mostly because I had just watched Die Hard 2 before starting Die Hard with a Vengeance, and I didn't like Die Hard 2 at all. And so when I went into Die Hard with a Vengeance, it seemed like the best movie ever, because I liked it so much more than Die Hard 2. But that does get me to a really good core point. And I know I'm kind of talking over-exaggerated and being very excited with it. So let me kind of reel myself back and talk more objectively and kind of talk more subjectively with a little less over-bombasticness, if we will. That is not a real grammatical term, but I do not care. So, I'll state this much factually. If Die Hard 2, in its current state, never existed, and all we got as a sequel to the original Die Hard was Die Hard with a Vengeance, I would not complain. I would honestly support the idea of them taking 7 years to make a follow-up to the original Die Hard and just have it be Die Hard with a Vengeance. That's how much I liked it. I will honestly say that Die Hard 2 can be skipped. I would not recommend Die Hard 2 to basically anybody at this point. I know that the reviews of it look good, but don't ever trust the number reviews. Trust the actual quantitative talking reviews. Yes, trust me, because I have credibility, because I talk on a college radio station. But, you know, I do mean that sincerely. I would not personally recommend Die Hard 2. I'd recommend the first movie, and I'd recommend Die Hard with a Vengeance all the way. I'd recommend watching them back to back. If anything, Die Hard with a Vengeance would be extremely benefited by watching the original Die Hard and then going straight into Die Hard with a Vengeance for so many different reasons that I can't get into because they're going to be spoilers. But I think it would be an amazing experience to do it. Now that I've mentioned it, I really want to do that at some point, but that's not going to be anytime soon because I've just watched them, so can't exactly do that tomorrow. You know what I'm saying? The point is, I liked it. There's some other specific reasons I liked it. Well, actually, specific reasons I liked it, because I just realized I've just been saying I liked it without providing specific examples. So, aside from it having such an incredibly fast-paced plot, I also think nearly every cast member is phenomenal. I mean, we got Bruce Willis returning as John McClane, so he's going to do a great job. I love Bruce Willis, and I think his acting performances are always something to write home about. I also will say that this movie has a character by the name of Zeus. And Zeus is played by Samuel L. Jackson. My goodness, if you don't like Samuel L. Jackson, what is wrong with you? Legitimately, I'm asking that. Who doesn't like Samuel L. Jackson? The wrong people dislike Samuel L. Jackson. That's what I'm going to say to that interpretation. I love Samuel L. Jackson, and seeing Bruce Willis and Samuel L. Jackson working together in this movie is so fun. They are clearly having a blast interacting with each other. The dialogue between the two of them is snappy, to the point, and extremely funny. And as a dynamic between two characters, they have an interesting, fleshed out one that actually says something and doesn't feel generic or cobbled together at the last second. It felt like they spent some time figuring out how would John McClane react to this type of character. And because of that, I appreciate their dynamic so much more. But what we have here is the case of perfect threes, because we have our two protagonists. Zeus is not an antagonist. We need an antagonist for the story. We need somebody within those first 3 minutes to make an impression, to make a presence known, even through just giving a phone call. And boy, do we get that with Jeremy Irons in the character he plays. I actually can't mention what this character's full name is. I'll just say that he calls himself Simon, and he's kind of a psycho, so he goes off of the Simon Says game for children. You know, Simon says, do this or I blow up this place. That's his whole modus operandi as a terrorist. But if I get into any more deeper than that, we might be getting into spoilers territory, and I don't want to spoil it for you. So, just understand that Jeremy Irons is on the exact same level as Alan Rickman, as Hans Gruber from the original Die Hard. Because of that specific dynamic, I would honestly say watching Die Hard with a Vengeance after the original Die Hard would be such a fun and entertaining experience. Again, I wish I could spoil it, but I'm not going to, because this movie's so fun, it's so fast, and it deserves your time. I fully endorse it. Not part of the reason. Some other reasons that I like Die Hard with a Vengeance would have to include the cinematography style. I really think the handheld camera angles and the way it just kind of jerks around and is almost documentary-ish style really benefits how fast, chaotic, and loud this movie is trying to be. And because of that, the movie can feel extremely chaotic, extremely fast-moving, also extremely overwhelming, so I will say I endorse it. But if you're kind of behind on a litmus test for dealing with overwhelming and kind of in your face all the time, never stop going movies, this might not be for you. Because of the way my brain is wired, I adore movies that are exactly like that, in your face, go all the time, never stop. That's my jam. So Die Hard with a Vengeance hits all the right notes for me. If it doesn't hit the right notes for you, I completely understand. It's not everybody's cup of tea, but for the people it is cup of tea for, I cannot recommend it enough. I will also say, I suppose my final 2 points would have to be this about Die Hard with a Vengeance. I'll say that I liked every single side character. You know how I mentioned that I disliked some of the side characters in the original Die Hard, and I disliked most of the side characters in Die Hard 2? Keep in mind the significance of this when I say, without exaggeration, I liked every side character in Die Hard with a Vengeance. Every single one. You could hold me to that. Ask me, what do you think of this side character? I like them. What about this one? No, I did that one too. Yes, that one. Yes, that one. Yes, all of them. All of them have something to do, something to say, something interesting, something that makes them stand out. It's what the original Die Hard did right, and it's what Die Hard with a Vengeance does right as well. Before we close out the show tonight, I have to ask one final question. Is Die Hard with a Vengeance a Christmas movie? No, it's not. It's set in New York in the summer, in the heat. It's hot outside. There is no snow. What we've learned from movies is if it's set in New York during Christmas, there's gonna be snow. Okay? We can't claim Die Hard with a Vengeance is a Christmas movie, but we can claim that it's an enjoyable movie, or at least I can claim that much, and I have claimed that much. So, with all that being said, thank you all for listening in to What to Watch Wednesdays tonight. My name is Nathan. I am the host of the show, and I'm also the host of What to Watch Weekends, which will air this upcoming Saturday from 8 to 10 p.m. here on 88.1 The Burg. This is unfortunately the last What to Watch Wednesdays broadcast of the calendar year, although I will be back in 2026 and at the start of winter quarter for more episodes of What to Watch Wednesdays. Please enjoy your winter break. I know I will be. I need a break. I'm very burnt out and very exhausted and very overworked, but I'm pulling through, and I hope everybody's final exams goes well next week. Again, if you want to tune in to What to Watch Weekends this Saturday from 8 to 10, please do. It'll be a very special episode. I can promise you that much right now. If you want to follow along with either show, What to Watch Wednesdays or What to Watch Weekends, please be sure to follow along at What to Watch Wednesdays, all one word, no caps, no spaces, on both Instagram and YouTube. I will see you all in 2026, telling you all what to watch. Good night, everybody, and have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.